September 20th, 1940, 2 p.m., Washington, D.C. Genevieve Grotjan carries worksheets across a cramped office floor. 27 years old, former railway statistician, mathematician recruited from civilian life. The worksheets contain patterns in Japanese diplomatic cipher messages. Purple cipher. 18 months of failed attempts to crack Japan's most secret communications system. Frank Rowlett looks up from his desk as Grotjan approaches, her face carrying the expression of someone who has just seen something impossible. "Look what Jean has just discovered," Rowlett says to William Friedman, who pushes through the gathering crowd of cryptanalysts. The moment hangs suspended in the stale air of the Army Signals Intelligence Service building. Grotjan points to repeating sequences in the purple cipher messages, correlations that had eluded every attempt to break Japan's diplomatic code. Friedman immediately grasps the significance. To mark the breakthrough, someone sends out for Cokes. The celebration is brief, the implications staggering. 1 week later, September 27th, Rowlett hands Friedman 2 complete, deciphered purple messages. The text reads clearly in English translation. Japan's most secret diplomatic cipher, the one they believed unbreakable, lies open like a book. The purple machine uses stepping switches from telephone exchanges, not the rotor systems of German Enigma machines. Friedman's team has built a working analog without ever seeing the original Japanese device, using $68,465 worth of parts to reconstruct a machine worth millions in intelligence value. What the Japanese Foreign Ministry does not know on this autumn day in 1940 is that their defeat in the Pacific War has already begun. Not through carrier strikes or amphibious landings, but through mathematics and pattern recognition performed in basement offices by civilians who learned cryptography from pamphlets and practice. Magic, the code name for Japanese diplomatic intelligence, will flow steadily into American hands for the next 5 years. Every diplomatic instruction, every policy debate, every strategic assessment sent between Tokyo and Japanese embassies worldwide will be read in Washington before some Japanese recipients even receive their copies. The Japanese continue transmitting their most sensitive communications through purple even after Germany warns them the system may be compromised. Ambassador Oshima in Berlin receives intelligence from German contacts that Americans possess unusual knowledge of Japanese diplomatic positions. The warning travels through official channels to Tokyo. Japanese cryptographers examine their systems, find no obvious weaknesses, and decide to continue using purple. Their mathematical confidence proves catastrophic. Purple carries diplomatic traffic exclusively. Military operations remain encrypted in separate naval and army codes. The Japanese Navy uses JN-25, a complex system with codebooks containing 33,000 words and phrases, each message encrypted twice through additive tables. Japanese Army communications flow through different cipher systems entirely. This compartmentalization initially limits purple's intelligence value, but the precedent established by Friedman's success guides similar efforts against military codes. Station HYPO occupies the basement of the 14th Naval District Administration building at Pearl Harbor. Lieutenant Commander Joseph Rockefort commands 738 naval personnel working in shifts around IBM punch card tabulating machines. The air smells of cigarettes and stale coffee. Rockefort rarely emerges from the basement, sleeping on a cot when exhaustion finally overcomes his determination to crack JN-25. His staff works 12-hour shifts, 7 days a week, building libraries of Japanese code groups through mathematical analysis and inspired guesswork. Rockefort wears slippers and bathrobes over his khaki uniform, earning ridicule from visiting officers who fail to comprehend the nature of his work. His team includes Lieutenant Commander Thomas Dyer, who keeps a sign behind his desk reading, "You don't have to be crazy to work here." But it helps a hell of a lot. The sign becomes prophetic. All successful cryptanalysts develop peculiar habits and obsessive attention to detail that civilian life cannot satisfy. December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor burns under Japanese carrier aircraft while Rockefort's team searches frantically through intercepts for warnings they failed to perceive. JN-25 traffic before the attack remains largely unreadable. The Japanese changed their naval codes on December 1st, introducing new additive tables that reset American progress to nearly zero. Rocafort feels personal responsibility for the intelligence failure. The guilt drives him deeper into the basement, more determined to prevent future surprises. The attack paradoxically advances American cryptographic efforts. JN-25 traffic increases dramatically as Japanese naval operations expand across the Pacific. Radio transmissions provide the raw material cryptanalysts need to identify patterns and recover code meanings. More traffic means more repetitions, more opportunities to cross-reference messages and deduce code group values. Station HYPO begins making steady progress against the new JN-25 system through January and February 1942. By March 1942, American cryptanalysts notice references to Operation MO in intercepted Japanese messages. The letters appear frequently enough to suggest a major operation under development. Traffic analysis indicates increased activity around Rabaul, the Japanese base on New Britain Island. Direction-finding stations track Japanese radio transmissions to plot ship movements and fleet concentrations. The intelligence picture gradually clarifies. Japan plans an amphibious assault on Port Moresby, the Australian base on New Guinea's southern coast. Admiral Chester Nimitz receives regular intelligence briefings from his Pacific Fleet intelligence officer, Lieutenant Commander Edwin Layton. Rocafort bypasses official channels to communicate directly with Layton, who shares 3 years of language training in Japan with the station HYPO commander. Their personal relationship enables rapid intelligence dissemination without bureaucratic delays that could prove fatal in operational situations. April 5, 1942. British cryptanalysts decipher a Japanese message directing carriers and large warships to proceed to Admiral Inoue's area of operations. April 13, another intercept reveals that Carrier Division 5, consisting of fleet carriers Shokaku and Zuikaku, travels from Formosa to join the Port Moresby operation. The intelligence reaches Admiral Nimitz through British channels, confirming American assessments about Japanese intentions. Station HYPO can read approximately 15% of JN-25 traffic by April 1942. Each successful decryption provides clues for additional code group recovery. The process resembles solving interconnected crossword puzzles in Japanese, with each solved word revealing letters for adjacent answers. Linguists work alongside mathematicians to test likely meanings against message contexts. Progress accelerates as the code recovery library expands. May 3, 1942. Japanese forces occupy Tulagi in the Solomon Islands, establishing seaplane bases to support the Port Moresby invasion. American radio intelligence detects the operation through increased message traffic and direction-finding bearings. Nimitz positions Task Force 17, built around carriers USS Lexington and USS Yorktown, to intercept Japanese forces in the Coral Sea. May 7, 1942. American dive bombers find the Japanese light carrier Shoho and sink her with devastating efficiency. Radio intelligence guides the strike, providing accurate positions for Japanese surface forces. The first major victory achieved through cryptographic intelligence demonstrates the tactical value of reading enemy communications. Japanese radio operators transmit damage reports and requests for assistance, providing real-time battle assessment to American commanders. USS Lexington suffers fatal damage from Japanese torpedo and dive bomber attacks on May 8. Stanley Johnston, Australian war correspondent for the Chicago Tribune, helps rescue burned sailors before evacuating to USS Barnett with other survivors. Commander Morton Seligman, Lexington's executive officer, shares quarters with Johnston during the voyage to San Diego. Seligman has access to naval communications, including intelligence bulletins describing Japanese fleet movements. Johnston observes a decoded intelligence message describing the Japanese order of battle heading for Midway. The document details ship classes, unit designations, and operational timelines derived from JN-25 intercepts. Johnston copies the information, later claiming he found it as scrap paper with doodling. The intelligence represents thousands of hours of cryptanalytic work by station HYPO personnel, compressed into tactical assessments for fleet commanders. Station HYPO identifies references to AF in Japanese messages throughout April and May 1942. Traffic analysis suggests AF represents the target of Japan's next major operation. Rockefort believes AF means Midway Atoll, but Washington analysts disagree. They suspect Japanese plans target the Aleutian Islands, Port Moresby, or even Hawaii itself. The debate continues through May as intercepts provide additional clues without definitive confirmation. Rockefort devises an ingenious test to resolve the AF controversy. Station HYPO instructs Midway to transmit an uncoded message reporting problems with the island's water desalination plant. The message travels by submarine cable to avoid Japanese interception of the setup. Within days, Japanese radio operators relay intelligence reports that AF is short of water, confirming Midway as the target of the impending operation. May 26, 1942. Station HYPO intercepts a Japanese message containing orders for destroyer groups escorting invasion transports. Lieutenant Joseph Finnegan discovers the cipher key for Japanese daytime groups, enabling precise timing calculations for the Midway assault. The attack will commence on June 4 or 5, not late June as Washington estimates. Rockefort's team analyzes 140 Japanese messages daily by this point, providing detailed intelligence on enemy intentions and capabilities. Admiral Yamamoto's plan calls for diversionary attacks on the Aleutian Islands followed by a massive strike on Midway. When American forces respond to defend Midway, the combined fleet will destroy them in decisive battle. The strategy depends on surprise and superior numbers. Yamamoto commands 4 fleet carriers, 2 battleships, and dozens of supporting vessels. Nimitz has 3 operational carriers and whatever land-based aircraft can reach the battle area. June 1, 1942. Nimitz commits his entire available fleet to the Midway operation based on Station HYPO intelligence assessments. The decision represents the ultimate validation of cryptographic intelligence. 3 carriers position themselves at Point Luck, northeast of Midway, waiting to ambush the Japanese fleet. USS Yorktown, damaged at Coral Sea, receives emergency repairs in just 2 days to participate in the operation. June 4, 1942, 6 a.m. Japanese carrier aircraft launch the first strike against Midway. American radar detects the incoming formation, providing sufficient warning for defensive preparations. The land-based aircraft counterattack proves largely ineffective against Japanese carriers, but their sacrifice provides critical intelligence on enemy positions. Radio traffic reveals Japanese flight operations and damage assessments to Station HYPO analysts monitoring the battle. June 4, 10:24 a.m. American dive bombers catch 3 Japanese carriers with aircraft being refueled and rearmed on their flight decks. Akagi, Kaga, and Soryu suffer catastrophic fires that doom all 3 ships. Hiryu launches a counterattack that damages Yorktown before American aircraft find and destroy the last Japanese carrier. For fleet carriers, lost versus 1 represents a decisive defeat for the combined fleet. Stanley Johnston arrives in Chicago on June 4 as the Midway battle unfolds. Managing editor J. Loy Maloney instructs him to write about the Coral Sea action, but Johnston mentions possessing information about Japanese fleet dispositions. The intelligence comes from the classified dispatch he observed aboard USS Barnett. Johnston writes a detailed account of Japanese naval forces approaching Midway, information that could only come from reading enemy communications. June 7, 1942. The Chicago Tribune publishes Johnston's story under the headline "Navy had word of Jap plan to strike at sea." The article describes Japanese fleet composition with accuracy that implies American foreknowledge of enemy plans. 14 paragraphs detail ship classes, escort arrangements, and operational objectives that match classified intelligence assessments. The leak represents the greatest threat to American cryptographic security during the entire war. President Franklin Roosevelt reacts with fury to the Tribune story. The newspaper's publisher, Colonel Robert McCormick, represents everything Roosevelt despises about isolationist opposition to the war effort. Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox presses Attorney General Francis Biddle to prosecute Johnston and Tribune editors under the Espionage Act. A federal grand jury convenes in Chicago to consider criminal charges. Admiral Ernest King orders investigation of the security breach. Navy investigators focus on Commander Seligman as the probable source of the leaked intelligence. Seligman's career suffers permanent damage despite his heroic service at Coral Sea. The investigation reveals systematic problems with intelligence security, leading to revised procedures for handling cryptographic materials. The Tribune's story reaches other newspapers through wire services. Walter Winchell mentions the Midway victory on his radio program, adding cryptic references to intercepted messages that changed the fate of civilization. The publicity threatens to expose American cryptographic capabilities to Japanese intelligence services. Censorship officials scramble to prevent additional coverage of the story. Japanese intelligence services never learn about the Tribune article or Winchell's radio comments. No changes occur in Japanese cryptographic procedures following the Midway battle. JN-25 traffic continues flowing to station HYPO without modification or increased security measures. The Japanese conclude that Midway resulted from tactical errors rather than intelligence compromise. The grand jury declines to indict Johnston, Maloney, or the Tribune Corporation. Prosecutors cannot reveal the source of the leaked intelligence without exposing ongoing cryptographic operations. The Espionage Act does not explicitly cover revelation of enemy secrets, only American classified information. Justice Department officials reluctantly accept that prosecution would cause more damage than the original leak. July 1942. Japanese forces advance overland toward Port Moresby through the Owen Stanley Mountains. Australian defenders fight delaying actions along the Kokoda Track, a treacherous jungle trail unsuitable for heavy equipment. The offensive fails when logistics collapse and Australian resistance proves stronger than anticipated. Japanese ambitions for southern expansion reach their limit. Station HYPO continues expanding its JN-25 recovery efforts throughout 1942. Traffic analysis reveals Japanese fleet movements and operational planning across the Pacific Theater. Intelligence reports guide American submarine operations, surface engagements, and amphibious assaults. The cryptographic advantage provides strategic warning of Japanese intentions and tactical details for combat operations. August 1942. American forces land on Guadalcanal, beginning the first major Allied offensive in the Pacific. Japanese radio traffic reveals their shock at the unexpected assault. Months of intelligence preparation enable precise targeting of Japanese installations and defensive positions. The campaign demonstrates American capability to transition from defensive to offensive operations. April 14, 1943. Station HYPO intercepts message NTF 131755 containing Admiral Yamamoto's inspection tour schedule. The message, encoded in JN-25D, provides precise timing and routing for the combined fleet commander's visit to Solomon Islands bases. Future Supreme Court Justice John Paul Stevens participates in the decryption process as a Navy cryptanalyst. Admiral Nimitz consults with Admiral William Halsey about using the intelligence to ambush Yamamoto. The decision requires careful consideration of risks versus benefits. Killing Yamamoto might alert Japanese forces to communications compromise. Alternatively, the psychological impact of losing their most capable commander could outweigh security concerns. April 17, 1943. Nimitz authorizes Operation Vengeance, the mission to intercept and kill Admiral Yamamoto. 18 P-38 Lightning fighters from Guadalcanal will fly over 400 miles to intercept Yamamoto's transport aircraft near Bougainville. The mission represents the ultimate expression of cryptographic intelligence translated into tactical action. April 18, 1943, 9:34 a.m. Tokyo time. P-38s intercept 2 Japanese Betty bombers escorted by 6 fighters. Lieutenant Rex Barber shoots down the lead bomber carrying Admiral Yamamoto. The architect of Pearl Harbor dies in the jungle, his body found the next day still strapped to his seat. The assassination succeeds because American cryptanalysts can read Japanese communications faster than some Japanese commanders receive their copies. The cover story attributes Yamamoto's death to chance encounter with American patrol aircraft. Intelligence sources remain protected through carefully constructed deception. Japanese forces accept the explanation, never suspecting that their most secret communications enabled the ambush. Yamamoto's replacement lacks his strategic vision and operational experience. Throughout 1943 and 1944, Station HYPO and its successor organizations maintain comprehensive penetration of Japanese naval communications. Intelligence reports guide American offensive operations across the Central Pacific. The island-hopping campaign succeeds partly through detailed knowledge of Japanese defensive preparations and reinforcement schedules. Japanese cryptographers occasionally propose modifications to their cipher systems but never implement fundamental changes. Mathematical confidence in their codes proves stronger than operational security concerns. Each successful American operation that might suggest intelligence compromise receives alternative explanations. Japanese commanders attribute tactical defeats to enemy superiority in resources rather than information. August 1945. Japan surrenders following atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. American occupation forces encourage continued use of Japanese communication systems to monitor compliance with surrender terms. Purple machines remain active in Japanese foreign ministry offices under Allied supervision. Japanese officials have no reason to suspect their diplomatic communications were compromised throughout the war. Congressional hearings examine Pearl Harbor intelligence failures and assign responsibility for the disaster. Testimony reveals extensive American cryptographic operations against Japanese codes. For the first time, Japanese officials learn that Purple, JN-25, and other cipher systems were comprehensively broken by Allied intelligence services. Former Japanese cryptographers express shock at the scope of American achievements. They had believed their mathematical systems provided absolute security against foreign penetration. The revelation that 18 months of Purple traffic was read in Washington before American entry into the war challenges fundamental assumptions about cryptographic strength. Japanese naval officers discover that their most sensitive operational planning was known to American commanders in real time. The Coral Sea Operation, Midway Assault, and Solomon Islands campaigns were conducted with American forces positioned through reading Japanese radio traffic. Every major naval engagement after December 1941 involved cryptographic intelligence that guided American tactical decisions. The psychological impact on Japanese leadership proves devastating. Years of strategic planning based on assumptions of communication security dissolve when the truth emerges. Operations failed not through tactical errors or material shortages, but because the enemy read their orders before subordinate commanders received them. William Friedman receives recognition for his cryptographic achievements but suffers lasting psychological damage from the war years. His mental breakdown in 1941 foreshadowed the personal costs of cryptographic warfare. Genevieve Grotjan returns to civilian life without public acknowledgement of her contributions to Allied victory. The secret nature of cryptographic work denies recognition to thousands of civilians who helped break enemy codes. Joseph Rockefort faces professional retaliation from Washington bureaucrats who resented his direct communication with Admiral Nimitz. Despite his crucial role in the Midway victory, Rockefort receives no immediate decorations for his service. Political enemies in the Navy Department engineer his removal from cryptographic duties. Recognition comes decades later when historians document his contributions to Pacific victory. The truth about magic and ultra operations remains classified for decades after the war's end. Japanese officials gradually learn the extent of their communications compromise through released documents and historical research. Each revelation adds to their understanding of how thoroughly American intelligence penetrated their military and diplomatic systems. Modern Japanese historians examine wartime decision-making with knowledge that all major communications were intercepted and decoded. Strategic assessments assume American awareness of Japanese intentions from 1940 onward. The psychological advantage gained through reading enemy communications proves as important as material superiority in ships and aircraft. Stanley Johnston's Chicago Tribune article becomes a footnote in intelligence history. The story that nearly exposed American cryptographic operations attracted no Japanese attention during the war. Johnston dies in 1962 without knowing how close his journalism came to changing the Pacific War's outcome. The grand jury testimony remains sealed for 75 years, protecting sources and methods long after their operational value expired. The stepping switches that enabled purple decryption come from telephone exchange equipment available in any industrial nation. Japanese cryptographers chose them for reliability and manufacturing simplicity, not realizing that American telephone engineers understood their operation intimately. Technical familiarity with commercial components provided crucial advantages in cryptographic analysis. German warnings about Japanese code security go unheeded by Tokyo officials confident in their mathematical systems. Ambassador Oshima in Berlin receives specific intelligence about American knowledge of Japanese diplomatic positions. The warnings travel through proper channels but fail to generate serious security reviews. Overconfidence in technical solutions proves more dangerous than enemy cryptographic capabilities. The human cost of cryptographic warfare extends beyond combat casualties to include psychological damage among intelligence personnel. Working in windowless basements for years, maintaining absolute secrecy about life-saving achievements, and bearing responsibility for operational failures creates lasting trauma. Many cryptographers require decades to process their wartime experiences. Technological advantages in cryptographic equipment prove less important than mathematical insight and linguistic expertise. Purple machines represent sophisticated engineering, but American cryptanalysts overcome them through pattern analysis and inspired guesswork. Human intelligence defeats mechanical complexity through persistent effort and creative thinking. The compartmentalization that protects diplomatic communications from military exploitation also limits Japanese awareness of cryptographic vulnerabilities. Foreign ministry officials never learn about naval code problems that might alert them to broader security issues. Institutional barriers prevent comprehensive security assessment across different cipher systems. Traffic analysis provides intelligence value even when specific messages resist decryption. Monitoring radio transmission patterns, call signs, and routing procedures reveals operational intentions without reading message content. Japanese forces cannot conduct major operations without generating radio traffic that exposes their movements to Allied intelligence services. American success in breaking Japanese codes depends on international cooperation among Allied cryptographic services. British, Australian, and Dutch intelligence organizations contribute personnel, equipment, and analysis to the joint effort. Sharing resources and expertise accelerates progress against complex cipher systems that might defeat individual national efforts. The psychological impact of reading enemy communications extends beyond tactical advantages to strategic confidence in Allied leadership. Knowing Japanese intentions enables bold operational decisions that would appear reckless without intelligence support. Nimitz commits his entire carrier force to Midway because he knows the enemy's plan in advance. Japanese failure to detect cryptographic compromise reflects institutional blind spots rather than technical incompetence. Military organizations focus on operational security measures while neglecting signal intelligence vulnerabilities. Procedures that protect information from human agents fail against mathematical attacks on cipher systems. The legacy of wartime cryptographic achievements influences post-war intelligence operations and technological development. Lessons learned from breaking Japanese codes guide American approaches to Soviet cipher systems during the Cold War. Mathematical techniques developed against Purple and JN-25 evolve into computer-based cryptanalysis that shapes modern intelligence capabilities. Educational institutions benefit from cryptographic personnel returning to civilian careers with enhanced mathematical and analytical skills. Universities gain faculty members whose wartime experience drives advances in statistics, computer science, and engineering. The human capital developed through cryptographic warfare contributes to American technological leadership in the post-war era. The secrecy surrounding cryptographic operations denies public recognition to thousands of civilians who contributed to Allied victory. Women mathematicians, immigrant linguists, and academic specialists work in anonymity, while combat personnel receive medals and public acclaim. Historical justice requires acknowledging their crucial contributions to winning the Pacific War. International law evolves to address cryptographic warfare and intelligence operations that blur traditional distinctions between military and civilian targets. Reading enemy communications enables precision attacks that minimize collateral damage while maximizing strategic impact. Legal frameworks struggle to address the implications of signals intelligence for warfare ethics. The technological revolution in communications accelerates cryptographic development and creates new vulnerabilities for security systems. Electronic cipher machines replace manual code systems but introduce mathematical patterns that skilled analysts can exploit. Progress in cryptographic technology generates countermeasures that drive further innovation in an endless cycle. Japanese shock at learning about American cryptographic success reflects broader themes about technological surprise and intelligence failure. Nations invest heavily in protective systems while remaining vulnerable to attacks they cannot imagine. Cryptographic warfare demonstrates how mathematical insight can overcome material advantages and strategic planning. The human dimension of cryptographic warfare encompasses not only the technical specialists who break codes, but also the commanders who use intelligence and the political leaders who authorize operations. Success requires coordination across multiple organizational levels and professional disciplines. Breaking codes represents only the first step in translating intelligence into operational advantage. Cultural factors influence both cryptographic design and cryptanalytic success. Japanese confidence in complex technical systems reflects broader assumptions about the superiority of sophisticated engineering. American success in breaking these systems demonstrates the power of diverse perspectives and unconventional approaches to problem solving. The economic implications of cryptographic warfare extend far beyond military operations to include effects on industrial production, resource allocation, and post-war reconstruction. Reading enemy communications enables more efficient use of Allied resources while disrupting Japanese economic planning. Intelligence advantages translate into material benefits that compound over time. Scientific advancement accelerates through cryptographic challenges that require innovative approaches to mathematical analysis and mechanical computation. The pressure to break enemy codes drives development of early computer technology and statistical methods. Wartime necessity creates breakthroughs that benefit civilian applications in the post-war era. The ethical dimensions of cryptographic warfare raise questions about privacy, deception, and the moral implications of reading private communications. Intelligence operations violate traditional norms of diplomatic correspondence while serving legitimate military objectives. Balancing operational needs against ethical constraints becomes increasingly complex as cryptographic capabilities expand. Historical analysis reveals how cryptographic intelligence shaped strategic decision-making throughout the Pacific War. Major operations succeed or fail based partly on the quality of intelligence available to commanders. Understanding these influences requires examining not only what intelligence was available but how it was interpreted and used in operational planning. The transformation of warfare through cryptographic intelligence establishes precedents for modern conflicts where information advantages determine outcomes. Contemporary military operations depend heavily on signals intelligence, communications interception, and electronic warfare capabilities. The lessons learned from breaking Japanese codes remain relevant for current strategic challenges. Regional stability in the post-war Pacific reflects partly the psychological impact of cryptographic revelations on Japanese strategic thinking. Learning that their most secret communications were compromised throughout the war influences Japanese approaches to defense planning and international relations. Trust in technical solutions requires rebuilding after comprehensive intelligence failure. The democratization of cryptographic knowledge through historical disclosure enables public understanding of intelligence operations while protecting current capabilities. Revealing past successes educates citizens about the importance of signals intelligence without compromising ongoing operations. Balancing transparency with security remains a continuing challenge for democratic societies. International cooperation in cryptographic operations establishes patterns for post-war intelligence sharing among allied nations. The success of joint efforts against Japanese codes demonstrates the value of combining resources and expertise across national boundaries. These relationships influence the development of international intelligence organizations and security partnerships. The evolution of cryptographic technology accelerates through competitive pressures between codemakers and codebreakers. Each advance in protective systems generates corresponding improvements in analytical methods. This technological arms race drives innovation in mathematics, engineering, and computer science with applications extending far beyond military intelligence. Professional education in cryptographic disciplines emerges from wartime training programs that develop expertise in mathematical analysis and foreign languages. Academic institutions establish formal curricula in cryptography, linguistics, and intelligence studies. The human resources created through these programs support both military and civilian applications of cryptographic technology. The strategic culture of nations reflects their experiences with cryptographic warfare and intelligence operations. Japanese emphasis on technical security measures stems partly from wartime vulnerabilities that were exploited by Allied intelligence services. American confidence in signals intelligence reflects the success of cryptographic operations against enemy communications. The documentation of cryptographic achievements serves historical research while protecting sensitive methods and sources. Releasing information about past operations enables scholarly analysis without revealing current capabilities or operational procedures. This careful balance supports democratic accountability while maintaining essential security protections. The human stories behind cryptographic success encompass not only the analysts who broke codes but also the support personnel who maintained equipment, processed materials, and preserved security. Success required coordinated effort among diverse specialists working under extreme pressure. Recognizing these contributions provides complete understanding of how cryptographic intelligence operations achieve their objectives. The technological infrastructure supporting cryptographic operations evolves from mechanical calculators and punch card machines to electronic computers and automated analysis systems. Investment in computing technology accelerates through military requirements for processing large volumes of intercepted communications. These advances benefit civilian applications in business, science, and education. The geographic distribution of cryptographic facilities reflects strategic considerations about security, communications, and personnel availability. Locating major facilities at Pearl Harbor, Washington, and other sites balances operational requirements with protection from enemy attack. These decisions influence the development of regional expertise and technological capabilities. The linguistic challenges of cryptographic operations require specialized education in foreign languages and cultural understanding. Success against Japanese codes depends not only on mathematical analysis but also on comprehension of Japanese military terminology and communication practices. This combination of technical and cultural expertise becomes essential for effective intelligence operations. The organizational structure of cryptographic services evolves through wartime experience to balance centralized coordination with distributed analysis capabilities. Multiple facilities working on the same problems provide redundancy while enabling specialization in different types of cipher systems. This structure influences post-war intelligence organization and international cooperation. The training programs developed for cryptographic personnel establish educational methods that benefit post-war academic and professional development. Intensive courses in mathematics, languages, and analytical methods create expertise that transfers to civilian careers. These human resources contribute to American technological and educational leadership in the post-war era. The security procedures protecting cryptographic operations establish precedents for handling classified information in democratic societies. Balancing operational secrecy with accountability to civilian leadership requires sophisticated administrative systems. These procedures influence the development of modern intelligence oversight and security classification systems. The psychological warfare aspects of cryptographic operations extend beyond tactical intelligence to strategic deception and morale effects. Reading enemy communications enables understanding of their psychological state and strategic concerns. This intelligence supports propaganda operations and strategic planning designed to exploit enemy weaknesses. The economic intelligence gathered through cryptographic operations provides understanding of enemy resource limitations and industrial capabilities. Reading Japanese communications reveals their concerns about fuel shortages, material constraints, and production difficulties. This intelligence guides Allied strategy for economic warfare and resource allocation. The diplomatic implications of cryptographic operations affect post-war international relations and treaty negotiations. Knowledge of enemy intentions and negotiating positions provides advantages in diplomatic exchanges. However, revealing the sources of this knowledge can damage relationships with allies and neutral nations. The technological transfer of cryptographic innovations to civilian applications accelerates economic development and scientific progress. Mathematical techniques developed for code-breaking benefit statistical analysis, quality control, and operational research. Electronic equipment designed for intelligence operations supports the development of commercial computers and communication systems. The institutional memory of cryptographic organizations preserves expertise and lessons learned through wartime operations. Maintaining continuity of personnel and procedures ensures that valuable experience transfers to post-war intelligence activities. This organizational learning becomes essential for adapting to new technological challenges and strategic requirements. The international legal framework governing cryptographic operations evolves through post-war treaties and agreements. Rules about intelligence gathering, communications interception, and information warfare develop to address new technological capabilities. These legal structures attempt to balance legitimate security interests with protection of privacy and sovereignty. The public understanding of cryptographic operations develops gradually through historical disclosure and academic research. Educational materials about intelligence activities help citizens understand the importance of these capabilities while maintaining necessary security restrictions. This public awareness supports democratic oversight of intelligence operations. The continuing relevance of wartime cryptographic lessons influences contemporary approaches to cybersecurity, information warfare, and intelligence operations. The fundamental principles of code breaking and traffic analysis remain applicable to modern communication systems. Understanding these historical precedents helps prepare for current and future security challenges. Japan's post-war reckoning with cryptographic failure becomes part of broader examination of wartime decision-making and strategic culture. Learning that their communications were comprehensively compromised throughout the conflict forces revaluation of military leadership and institutional capabilities. This historical analysis influences Japanese approaches to defense planning and international security cooperation. The revelation that magic broke their codes represents not merely technical defeat but fundamental miscalculation about the nature of modern warfare. Japanese leaders conducted the Pacific War under the illusion of communication security, while their enemies read their most sensitive messages. This intelligence failure contributed to strategic defeats that shaped the outcome of World War II and the subsequent development of the Asia-Pacific region. The shock of discovery continues to influence Japanese strategic thinking decades after the war's end, serving as a permanent reminder that technological confidence without security awareness creates vulnerabilities that skilled adversaries will exploit.